Okay, good day. We're up to video number 7 in our series of rebuilding a vibe coded app, using a bit of vibe coding ourselves, but thinking it through. And in the last video, I managed to I got the user editing kind of happening, both locally and in the cloud. So we're logging in, we're editing our own data, and I want to do two things today. First thing is I want to flesh out all of the user fields. If I jump over to Firebase here and go to Firestore, and I jump into my user profiles collection, I have just the very basics. I have date of birth, effectively, and that's the only field that we're handling at the moment. So I want to completely flesh these out as much as possible, and I'll kick that off first, and then I potentially want to do the kiosk display for the app, where it sort of sits not really logged into any administrator account, but if someone puts a pin in, it will open up. It'll give them some context about their current shift, or that they've checked into their current shift. So very minimal amount of information, because the pin would be essentially like easily shareable, easily, we could consider the pin not really a password, more kind of like a lightweight access card. And I was going to do some fingerprint scanning stuff, and with one of these, which is what my brother has. It's a digital persona URU 4500, and he actually had a lot of trouble vibe coding with this, and I think from looking at it, it's because the drivers, while they install on Windows 11, the drivers are built for Windows 10, and essentially what happened is he rebuilt the drivers, rebuilt the local C# application through persistence, vibe coding persistence. There must be a word for that, and he also rebuilt sort of the local sort of tooling that you connect to via a WebSocket to connect to the fingerprint reader. So yesterday I spent a fair bit of time building an app, which was just a simple app, which is JavaScript, like a JavaScript app that used the advertised tools for this fingerprint reader on in an NPM package, and I set it all up, and I came to the same problems. You could see the WebSocket trying to connect, and then the SDK was returning an empty set of fingerprint readers. So you could see it connecting to the local tools, and when I checked this out with when I did an analysis of his code using deep research, the workarounds were stupendous. So we won't be doing those workarounds, but we will. So we're going to focus on a pin, and then if he wants to port, I think that his custom code for installing on a Surface Pro, at some stage we'll put that in its own repository, and then he can integrate with the Firebase application to that, but essentially that fingerprint scanning will be an alternative way to access other than the pin, and so we're going to focus on just pin access to in the kiosk mode for someone to be able to sign on to their shift, get some basic information. So the other thing I want to do today is I am going to do an event system to do scheduling, not because again, this is definitely one area that I wouldn't dive into normally. I would not build a calendar app, more or less. Why? Why wouldn't I build a calendar app? I'm just so used to using open source tools and not reinventing the wheel. So I'm going to take on face value that my brother wants to maintain his own solutions for these things. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to just do a very sound, concrete event system. And we'll try and do some best practice, some best practice. I will try and do some highly principled architecture that, we'll see how far we can get this. Look, I mean, for my purposes, it's good to learn to use Firestore. I'm not going to lie. There's going to be a certain amount of like, okay, this is working, but I'm not going to be maintaining it necessarily. That's probably an unresolved issue. It's not my business. So I'm trying to rebuild this application, and I'm trying to bring it to the point where it can be extended upon, maintained. Right. I need to get some stuff going. So let's come back to our app and let's pull up some things. Oops, got another project running there, so let's just clear that. And where are we? CD, Aussie Coffee. What is the damn project again? Do I have a repos folder? I can't even remember. AC Pond Fire. So let's get this up and running. NPM. So it's emulators. PNPM emulators. I swear, like, my biggest problem in tech is context. Everyone's biggest problem is context switching. But I can just switch to another project for 4 hours and then completely forget all of the muscle memory commands from the previous project. All right, so we're starting our emulators here. And we'll just double check now. So we also, what we did last time. So let's have a look at our, let's go and have a look at our, what do we call it? Our dashboard. So remember, we don't have any user data. So we need to run, hopefully we've got our seed command that we can run. Oh, cool. I mean, reaping the awards of what was done in the last session, I guess. So let's open up a new tab and jump into the same project and see if we can seed it. So PNPM seed. Okay, it's created, hopefully it's created 4 users for us. And if I refresh over here, there's our 4 users. So that's great. Edit user. And I think I was mentioning that, yeah, we've got we're going to take advantage of these things. That's how it does the claims. Okay, so each user object has a claims JavaScript, and this is how it determines certain roles. PG based on roles. Okay, I hadn't seen how that done. We did the roles in the last thing so we could give someone admin or manager role, and I just was naive to how that would actually be implemented, and that's how it's implemented. So it's also got phone number here at one stage, so we might look at that at one point. Okay, let's jump out of that. So if I come over to the app locally, which I should get a URL for that somewhere. Is it this one? No, this one. Okay, there's our app sign in with an email and password, and I think all of the users are just, password is the same as the email address. Yeah. All right, so I'm logged in locally. And to confirm this is working in the cloud, I'm not going to jump into the cloud right now, but obviously we want to, when we deploy, we want to verify that everything's kind of working. But after a while, when we get into this same pattern of editing using the emulators and editing in the cloud, it should all just work, hopefully. So yeah, so we'll probably look at testing at a later point as well. Okay, so let's have a look at this. This is the onboarding application. This is a standalone application, from what I know. Well, there's a cloud function that backs it, but okay, this is the onboarding application. And my brother gave me this link, and I think he's expecting me to fill this in as if I was a staff member onto his system. I don't 100% know where this goes when you save it, because like I said, most of his application is running as a bundled app that deploys on the Surface Pro. I think some of the information lives in the cloud. Not sure. But what we want from this, what this is an indication of is, you know, the name relationship, obligatorio is required, I assume, but I'm going to translate this in a second. So I've had a look at all. So I've taken some of these questions and I've jumped over into the old code base, and you can see here that I found that this text, just to make sure that what this work that he did does actually appear in the code base. There it is. I'm going to assume this is like a React app or something, but yeah. So because I have this old code base and all the things, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and tell Codex to go get it. So let's open Codex and let's kick this off, because this will be a fairly meaty task and we can do other things in the meantime. All right, let's close that. This one actually is the testing that I was doing, getting digital persona working. So yeah, I've got that separate. I put that in as, you know, I'm not going to, I knew it's just going to be chunky and a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't want to keep, and I just created a separate project for it. Okay, so not there, this one. New project, AC Pontify. Okay, so now it lives, I've got instructions that tell Codex not to go outside of the current directory. So what we need to do, what's going on there, clear? What we need to do is we need to instruct it that it can. So in the directory, and let's get some Super Whisper going. Do I have it running? No. Okay. There is the old prototype code base for this application. You have permission to go outside of the current directory and examine this code base. In this code base, there are a lot of references to a user and user properties. For example, there is an onboarding application, link below, which gathers information about the employee for storage. I want you to do a thorough scan of this application, and I want you to collect up all of the user properties. And what we're going to do is we're going to add these user properties to the user profile collection in Firestore. We are going to stub out all of the seed files with the properties and with fake values for these properties. And we're going to update the user edit form to also show these properties. Do not spend any effort formatting or styling. Just display the fields in the form, you know, sequentially. I think that's it. So I'll just grab the I'll just grab the path because this onboarding file does contain quite a lot of information. So we go front. So it's in an app called Front End. This is the interesting thing. So there's an onboarding edge worker and an onboarding holding page. I don't think there's going to be much going on in these. I mean, there's a lot going on in these, considering the fact that we think that they're redundant. We don't need them. But so we have the front end, and in the front end, there's an onboarding page. Okay, so we think that most of the things are going to live in here. So we'll grab this path and we'll paste out. Well, where did our Super Whisper go? Oh, shit. Wait. What happened to our Super Whisper? Do we have to do that again? That's annoying. Okay, there's our code, there's our conversation, so grab that. Okay, in the directory there's no prototype. Do not use font styling, just for display the fields in the form sequentially. On that note, let's have a quick look at this form. Sorry, let's grab this path again. Copy the full path. Okay. Example of form with user fields. I don't need this on extra high. Medium. So I'm just, yeah, so let's just jumping in back into this onboarding form. Let's translate this. Well, okay, so separate your documents. So it's going to be gathering a lot of information about the user. We're not going to do photos, so we'll exclude any media from this. Let's not have it upload media at the moment. It takes about 10 minutes. Review before shipping. You'll see everything on a clear screen at the end. So that is an example of slop from the AI prompt. Personal data. Date of birth, start date with the company. It's locked. Interesting. But we'll grab all that sort of stuff. This is Brazilian tax law stuff. Form submitted, Aussie coffee review. Okay, so there is a workflow, and I mean, like this is the stuff where, you know, if the project is successful, maybe this stuff should get added. I don't think this stuff should be scheduled entrance exam. Like, this is really speculative stuff, and I'm making some judgment calls to not do it. We're not doing scheduled entrance exams. We will at some stage look at competencies and how to track competencies, but I did have a discussion with Dan about this and say, you know, there's going to be there's a certain amount that where humans are going to be better, and they're going to if you don't do something perfectly, it's going to rubber band back to it being a human, and we're going to take advantage of that. So we're not. So there's just a lot of this stuff. We're just discarding it for now, and let's see if this application is successful and if it grows in a way that more information gets added to it, I guess. Okay, so all I want to do from that is I want to jump back to the prompt and just say, do not do any media handling. Just ignore photo and document fields. And the reason for that is we haven't done anything with file storage yet, so we're going to leave. We don't want to start doing anything with file storage until we're ready to do it. Let's hit go on that. I'll come back to it here and now and again just to see if it's got any questions for me or got any things it wants me to run. Now, while that's running, I want to look. What I want to do is, I want to actually manually start a collection or two so that I can go through the process of thinking about the modeling for these collections. The first collection I want to do is event. Also, I mean, okay, so another thing is I'm going to use this by having having a collection which has already been modeled. It gives me a little bit of an opportunity to sort of try the system out and see what this looks like doing it manually, so that I understand kind of how stuff's being stored and so forth. All right, start a collection. So I want to do an event collection, and the reason why I'm calling it an event is I'm trying to use a very generic word to describe anything that has some sort of date handling. And this is a general content modeling rule that I follow anyway. Like if I was building a calendar system, I might go down the path of having slightly different collections where maybe there's like an appointment collection, and then maybe there's like a birthdays collection or an events collection or something like that, all these different ones. But when I think through what this HR system needs to do, is the first thing I can think of is scheduling. Like if you've got your staff and you want to plot them onto a calendar and you want to measure their start and end dates and so forth, you need to have some sort of calendar item with a start date and end date. And it's not always going to be. Some of these might not be shifts. They might be appointments. They might be. There might even be notable dates. There might be birthdays. I don't know. But one thing that ties all those things together is generally the start and optionally an end date. And if we try to find a word that really encapsulates what these are, I think event is a good word. I know that's a really long way of saying that I overthink about content modeling, but yeah. I also want to see what happens here, like what sort of errors it gives me. So let's just go into it. So we'll do an auto ID for our, I don't know if we want to have, I don't know if our IDs want to be something, but to start with, I'm just going to start with an auto ID just until I get the hang of this. And then this is the kind of thing that I want to see. Like, is there actually a date field? And what is the best? It's a timestamp field, but what's the best way to store a date field? So I'm just actually going to do a search for that. So I'm going to use the Firebase GPT for that. Let's jump into Firebase. What is the best way to store a date field with time zone in Firestore? In a document, what data type? All right. Okay, so in the meantime, this is in progress building out, inspecting the app. So it's scanning. It hasn't asked me to do anything. Following those references rather than relying on the rendered JSX. I'm also checking the current profile helper. I found the current profile document only stores date of birth. So the change will mostly be expanding. That's fine. The prototype's non-media profile data is larger than the current app. Yes, it is. Of course it is. Because we only have date of birth. I'm going to keep the Firestore profile shaped like the onboarding form. Yes. Seems sensible. The profile helper now owns the full field catalog and default shape. Yeah, that looks like it's going fine. And then over here, best practice to store the actual point in time as a Firestore timestamp. Firestore's timestamp, not as a string, but that, okay, so that timestamp captures, does capture the time zone. So So that's the kind of thing I want to do, quote unquote, correctly. Like, guide rails for AI are great where you know what they are. If you know something for certain and you can set that up, it might even just be the name of a file, or it might be the name of a variable or whatever. But if you can create, if there's something that you know as an architect about how you want to architect your application, and you can implement that somehow in Stone, and then let the AI fill in the gaps, your outcomes are better. So, so for me to be able to create a collection document that is that I feel is correct from a, like, say, a data type point of view, then that's going to give me much better and much quicker outcomes, and also increase my knowledge of how the application works. So date start, and he wants me to set a date, so let's just set a date, and then date end. Save. Now, has that created an event? Yep, there's my event. Okay, so we've got a couple of things. I could add. Let's add a few more fields here. I'm going to start with a shift, because a shift, like a type, because I want to be able to capture that the type is shift by default. And then maybe leave myself a little bit of playroom to go into just some different types. So we're scheduling an event. The event is a shift, and it'll have to belong to have a person assigned to it. I just don't know what the person reference is going to look like at the moment. So let's do type, event type, just to be really explicit. Is a string, and the string is shift. Now, does it have any ability to create? No. Okay. Event type is a shift. Add that. Now, there is this reference type, collection document. Yeah. So user profiles. So a reference would be user profiles, and then what? If I have a user profile, and then I have, can I copy that name? Yep. Yeah. So if I add a field and I make it a reference, now I might end up making a mistake here where I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this in a normative way, I guess. Employee. So let's call it employee or user. So I'm referencing a user profile. Is that the right way to go? Don't know. I'm almost inclined just to call it a user profile, actually, because let's just change that approach. Let's call it a user profile, and then we're just moving the namespace later if we want to change it, if we needed to make it a reference to an actual user. And at least this way it's really explicit about which collection it's referring to. So user profiles, I notice that this collection is pluralized and this collection is singular. So now I don't like that they're different. Let's add that. Can I change the collection name? ... delete collection. No. So I'm not going to have like a mix of plural and non-plural. That's bad. Let's do events. And okay. All right. So I'll just do a quick little swapping over of these fields, and I'll delete my event collection. So I need a date start, date end, and event type. Date start, timestamp, choose a date, and date end. And what was the other thing? Event type. String, and the event type was shift. All right, that's given me enough to think about. Okay, let's have a look at what we implemented and expanded user profile work. So it's finished the job. Hopefully, we should be able to see in our project. Oh, where's my project? Here we go. Hopefully, we see in our project all the extra data. So that's a fair bit of data. What have we got? Employee code. Yeah, sure. Okay, so we've got an employee code. I don't mind that. Onboarding invitation ID. So I'm going to be, I don't know. I'm not sure about this onboarding invitation. I don't understand why it's not just, hey, log in here and then ask a bunch of questions. So anyway, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove anything that just doesn't, that's just a bit smelly. Primary position. So that is like, is that just the job title? Sure. I'll leave that as is. Record type. Record type. Don't want that. Detail status is, so this whole workflow thing, I don't want any workflow. I am just mindful of the fact I'm deleting quite a lot of stuff here. Let's just have a squeeze through before we continue. Job position version ID, shift start time, shift end time. Is that like desired start time and end time? I am going to leave these things in here for now because when I delete them, I want to do it against a git diff. So let's just see if this is working. Right, we have an address and it's, so there's a living address and then there's a mailing address. Seems like a few too many fields. Is community address? I don't know if this is a Rio thing. If it's just to say, because you don't have postal services in the favelas, and it might be that when it comes to, although I don't see any reference. I do wonder I wonder if that's related to people who live in the favelas where there's like a much different infrastructure, not necessarily a postal service. Pix payment address is huge. That's how that a lot of financial transactions go through the Pix network. Then they got bank account details, transport declaration. Feels overcooked. for this stage of the project. Next of kin, notes, uses a third party. Yeah, so notes is fine. Consent. That's something I think will be a little bit pre-cooked. Like I wouldn't be storing consent information on a user profile, like especially if it's consent to a number of different things. Privacy notice accepted. Like, what if there's more than one privacy notice? What if there's kind of like ongoing things that employees need to accept? How much of these need to live here on the user object? So I will remove those until I'm clear about how they're going to work. All right, so let's just ship over to the chat. Are you Brazilian? Hi, not Brazilian. No, my brother is Brazilian. My brother lives in Rio and runs a cafe. Cheers, dude. I just started a vibe coder project. No coding knowledge. Starting to hit a dev wall. Yeah, I bet you are. Like, can be pretty full on. What's your what platform are you using? Are you using, Robert? Oh, I'm assuming. Oh, there we go. Not only am I not Brazilian, but I can't even. I looked at the Portuguese version of that question there, Vicky, and I can't really pronounce it. It's going to be something like "Você é brasileiro." I do speak a bit of Spanish, so that doesn't help half the time. Okay, so we've got quite a lot of information, and we've got some of these fields we don't want have been duplicated across the different seed files. Whatever. Let's see if it works. What browser should I be in again? Okay, so I'm in my own personal object here. I don't get any changes yet. There is. So here's all my fields. They're all in just one big list of fields. So super ugly, but I did ask the ChatGPT not to try and style things. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's just change some values and see what happens. Bank of the world. Obviously, there should be a save button here somewhere, so let's save that. Okay, and we'll go and have a look in the emulator. And where's our emulator again? I've lost everything. Firebase emulator suite. Firestore, user profiles. So this is the one I just saved. It should say Bank of the World here somewhere. There we go. Oh, it looks like it structures some values. So consent, yeah, consent is a nested structured value. That's fine. Transportation is, and addresses are nested and structured as well. Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure I like the structure, but I think it's fine at the moment until we play around a bit further with it. Now, if I run my seed command, I should get that information for all of those users. In this tab. Okay, there was a little bit of an error. Property admin is undefined for object. Going to pump that straight back into Codex. I think it's worth doing the kiosk mode. Okay, so let's look at what the kiosk mode is going to be by just run this update for Super Whisper. I've gone completely blank. I'm trying to. Yeah, I was waiting for Super Whisper to restart. There we go. Right. So what I want to do is I want a kiosk mode, and what it's going to happen is effectively the way I think about this is it sort of wants to log out the current user, wants to put them in, and essentially, log out the current user. I don't want anyone to be able to have a way of accessing that as a logged in user, their own personal details. So I'm imagining someone's in the cafe, they're logged in to the point, they're logged into the app, they go into kiosk mode, and then they walk away, and they might not come back to that Surface Pro for the rest of the day, to that computer for the rest of the day. When they put it into kiosk mode, they are logged out. And then if someone comes along and pins in, they get this shallow, superficial version of the app. And then I need them to be able to, I need then a manager to be able to come back and to log back into the full version. So let's chuck that into Super Whisper. Okay, the app UI at the moment shows the username in the corner, and I need a button to go into kiosk mode. In kiosk mode, the user is effectively logged out, and it redirects to a kiosk route, and in the kiosk route, there is basically the list of users, and if you click on a user, it asks for your PIN, and with the PIN, then it will show the name of the user. Actually, I'm going to change that a little bit. Might start that again. So let's just stop that. Okay, so the app at the moment displays, when someone's logged in, it shows them their user details in the corner, and there's a menu on the side. In the menu on the side, I want to have a link which is kiosk mode. When you go into kiosk mode, it will effectively log out the user, and then there will be a PIN number screen, and if you put in the PIN number, that it will then match a user, and it will show a custom kiosk view, and I just want to show the name of the user whose PIN was matched. And then there's a button which is log in as manager on the kiosk mode, and when you click this, it just takes you to the normal login form that it is default when you're not logged in. So I don't really know how well this is going to go. I kind of feel like that some of this stuff is going to end up creating a bit of like a UI UX nightmare, but we'll certainly give it a go. Now Codex says there's my seeds, and so if I just finish this job off, if I jump over to my emulator over here, and if I click, now you can see that all of my users have their seeded data there. And for me, that's good enough for now. I don't really want to spend time like finessing UI and forms and stuff until I kind of get the main infrastructure of the data and the content. Just reading the questions on the screen from Robert. Scans the dealer websites, documents the page. Actually, I'll bring this onto the page. Yeah, that's so asking Claude Sonnet to help me prompt TypeScript and SQL for tables. And tell me if you want to share more, Robert. Tell me where you're planning to host it if you've got any idea of that at the moment. Like TypeScript and SQL. TypeScript is certainly a good choice. It's going to be the choice that a lot of AI will use when you ask it to do things. SQL definitely suggests there's going to be a database there. And Superbase. Yeah, cool. That's cool. I like it. I've used Vercel a little bit, and I'm always curious. One of the reasons why I'm doing Firebase for this project is that I do want to have personal experience with how much it'll cost to run it, because nominally, especially on Google Cloud, there'll be a free price bracket, and I want to see for a cafe of 10 people, 12 people or whatever, I want to see if this will sit under the free price tier on Google Cloud. And I haven't done productionized anything on Vercel, but I would have the same curiosity. Well, feel free to keep following, Robert. I mean, these videos they're kind of long and tedious, but I do at times kind of look at the questions, look at some of the decisions that got made. So my brother doesn't code, and he doesn't look at the code, and he won't look at the code. So sometimes when he's built something with Codex, sometimes I discuss here, and he's quite happy for me to do that. I discuss here whether or not that outcome was really ideal. There's definitely some things I was just talking earlier in the video about connecting a fingerprint scanner, which should be on the screen there. And the stuff that he built, like I would never touch it. Like if he wants to maintain that, that's fine, but he's going to have a nightmare trying to maintain that installation that he built across multiple computers. And the idea that you'd walk into a cafe and upgrade it with any sort of ease is just, it's like you do you. I would never touch it. And so what I'm trying to do with the application that he built is trying to take all the parts that are a natural cloud application that you might run on Vercel, and try to pull all of those things out. And you'll notice in these videos, I kind of sometimes go, that's overcooked, I'm not touching it. And you might look at some of those features if I go back to this form. So you might look at some of these features, and specifically this tab here. I'll just jump back into Portuguese. So what do? I show original. If I refresh this onboarding page, leave this up for a bit. You've got, and then I'll use this native conversion. So it doesn't quite translate. Better go back into English. So you've got this section, scheduled entrance exam, and on paper it looks like a compelling thing. It's like, okay, so I have new staff coming through every month. There's a couple of new staff who come through. There are things that I want them to do and to study and to learn and to know that they can do it. But at the end of the day, if you need to know that someone can make a coffee or cook something or do something to a certain requirement, the reality is that in a cafe, most of those things happen through people. And there's just, unless you're going to scale to 20 cafes, the investment that you would make in some of these things look like something very simple on paper, but the actual amount of functionality that you would build to support it, just is, there's you can do more with AI, yes, but there's a point where that's too much. So it's really quite interesting to see how a non-developer would take a requirement and go, oh, I'm going to build this, I'm going to code this. And then to see what gets created at the end of that, and just to go, wow, you could have 90% of that with only 10% of the amount of complexity. And I don't think there's any, I think it's experience. I think it's personal experience. I think you have to be willing to kind of go, this isn't working, and look at it. And like I was looking, so if I'm over here in, this is Firebase, the data storage, and I'm looking at, now I vibe coded, essentially I vibe coded the user profile, okay? So I asked ChatGPT to, I want to be out of a user, and I'll save it, but then I then go and look and see, like for me, the full circle is looking and seeing what happened as a result of that. And in most of the cases, what happens is fine because it's just generic code. And then in that 1% or 10% of the cases, something is just like, oh my God, that's going to be a nightmare. And that's really hard to know. The real challenge is how do you coming into coding using AI, how do you decide what the balance should be? I don't think there's a simple answer to that. And I think that, yeah, so this video is meant to be just, this video series is meant to just be just looking at the things that happen and, you know, gaining an understanding and an insight into that process. Anyway, enough of my waffling on. Yeah, so Robert says, I might be doing something similar. I think Sonnet 5 will add a table anytime I suggest a new data point and I ask it to challenge me and it says I'm right, but I don't know. And no, I mean, that's right. And so I'm really curious, Robert, if there are emerging ways of like applying a knowledge, you know, of going, okay, hang a second, why have you done this? And knowing and actually knowing, and I learn through doing, and so for me it's great because I can ask Codex to do something, and then I see, oh, you've created a user profiles collection. Now I know how that works, and I'm like supercharged by that because I'd never built a Firebase app before. I generally know it's going to have a data store, and I generally know that this is all JSON data in the background, but actually what actually happens in a running application. So I think I still have on my clipboard that new task for Codex. So this is like, yeah, really speculative. Like I've never built like a kiosk, I have done similar things, but I don't really have a strong opinion about what the architecture should be here. Like, should the manager still be logged in? Like, and when I say logged in, is this the browser remembers the cookie and the session? Because if the manager stays logged in, there are ways that someone could easily capture that information and log in as that manager, even though there's no button on the UI. So my security gut feeling is that when we go into kiosk mode, we're logging out. And that there's two different ways of logging in. One of those ways of logging in is a full login, which uses, you know, your Google account, your Gmail account or whatever. And then there's like this shallow PIN number login. And if we're doing a web app, there's no way that we can like keep the manager's login safe while we're in kiosk mode. Maybe if we're on an iPad app or something like that, that's a bit of a different story. But I mean, I'm taking a very pessimistic view here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to log out, and then the employee puts the PIN number in, and they'll get this really shallow view. And I'm also really aware that we're going to start adding features to this, and it's going to look more and more like crap. But I'm not going to try and solve that until later. So let's kick that off. I'm going to do a deployment in the meantime. And just sort of see if I can edit the users up in the cloud. So Firebase deploy. So far, this has been okay to do. I haven't had any problems doing deployments while, look, Codex is just preparing information at the moment. It's not changing files, so I might even just do a sneaky commit if this finishes as well. In retrospect, I should have done a commit just before I kicked off this task. But, yeah. I found no kiosk pin field in the profile scanner, so I'm going to add one to the user profile. So I haven't asked it to create a pin for the user. So I'm actually going to guide it here. I want to have a separate, do I want to have a pin field? I don't really want to store the pins on the user profile. I don't know why. Something tells me what happens when a user logs in. So they put their pin in. There's going to be a search in all of the user profile documents where the pin number matches a certain value. I don't want to have a uni users to have the same pin, obviously. So, and that's going to be another security consideration. Is like, in theory, if two users can't have the same pin, you could just try changing your pin as many times until you hit a pin that you couldn't have, and then you could log in as someone else and see their shifts using that pin. Like, I don't like pins. Like, I don't like the idea, and then obviously the idea of like having the fingerprint scanner is that you're protecting people, but even though that's unreliable, and my brother did have a pin system as well as this fingerprint system in his prototype. So I the only thing I really want to do with the pin is sign on, sign off for the shift, really, and the most basic information that they can have. I'm really trying to lean things more towards the fact that, you know, these guys will generally have a phone. If they want to, they'll be able to log into this application as their employee on their phone. Yeah. So yeah, I have my reservations about the whole pin thing. Let's just say that. I want to keep it really light. I'm just reading Robert's comment that you'll probably pay for a code audit at the end. I think I will do it with this application. Partly, if I could find a Firebase developer, and even finding people with skills can be hard. Like, what do? You go on Fiverr and say, "Hey, do you know Firebase?" And then they're just going to chuck it through AI. I think for the audit, what I like to do is I like to go into a different system or a different session, and I'll ask AI and say, like, you can see here, I've got ChatGPT, right? I've got a Firebase GBT. So they exist. Like, the specialist knowledge exists. In my application, the CLI added a bunch of agent files. So if I jump over to my application, you can see the CLI said to me, would you like me to add a whole bunch of agent stuff? And so it's done that. So usually what I would do at the very least is I would say, give me a general audit of my application in terms of complexity and, and see how I go from there. And I'd love to be able to pay someone to review it when I'm finished, so I know what I did wrong. It's really, how do you get a good measure of that? It's very difficult. All right, I'm going to go back here, and so it's implemented a kiosk mode. It added a pin field to my user, which, as I said before, makes me a little bit nervous. Nervous in that I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. But let's see if we can get something that makes some sense. Okay. I guess I need to know what my pin is. So if I look in the code in the seed files, it should have added a pin to my seed. So there's my kiosk pin here, 9001. So what is it? Oh yeah, it's created different kiosk pins for all of the seeds. All right, let's try it. All right, I should have a kiosk mode. This is my kiosk mode. Now, there's no way that I would ship it like this. That's just obviously garbage, but I I really want the functionality to make sense. So the functionality makes sense. I can log in as a manager. I can put my PIN in. My PIN is 9001. I hit continue. PIN was not accepted. Why? Because I haven't run the seed, I don't think. Let's try that. So let's refresh that. 9001. PIN was not accepted. What about 2001? Nope, PIN was not accepted. Let's have a look at the data in the local Firestore emulator. Who is me? Who is me in this? This one's me. Is there a kiosk? I don't even see the kiosk value, so I don't know if that's actually being loaded. Why don't we manually load it? String 9001. Okay, and it was not accepted. All right, let's work it out. So the kiosk pin 9001. I double check that it is or isn't being loaded into the system using the seed function. So let's go to another. And if I just search on the screen for kiosk, whoops. There's my kiosk pin 1002. Okay, so it has access to the data locally. I'm curious if I look in, let's see what happens in the console. Okay, so we have a call, a local call, and the response to that call. PIN. Okay, PIN was not accepted. Why? Okay. So the PIN returns. PIN was not accepted. The PIN fails with PIN was not accepted. I have checked that the local Firestore emulator has kiosk PIN typing for all of the users. Can you double? Is there anything else that I might have done? Maybe I need to. No, I'm just gonna build. I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything silly by like getting it to investigate a problem that doesn't exist. I'm just trying to think of what else might be going wrong here before I do this. So I'm just looking at the response. And yeah. So because humans are inherently lazy, I'll just kick this off and see if I can get it to do it. I'm just going to have a look at some of these files and see what's changed. In the meantime, git, so if I do a git diff on Firestore rules. Huh, interesting. What does the Firestore rules file do? What do I want to read? Let's try asking Firebase. So give me a summary of the use of Firestore rules. I'm quite interested here that obviously it's Firestore rules. It's a specific file, configuration file, that is just very specific to Firestore, right? It's not a generic, JavaScript file that you might see in any React application or something like that. It's a very specific file. And it's obvious, it's also JavaScript. I can see it's JavaScript, but it doesn't use a JavaScript.js file or anything like that. And so it's a security rules file for Firestore. It controls which client requests are allowed to read, write, update, and delete. A typical rule looks like this. Okay. Match that URL or that route. Allow reading, allow creating, updating. Sure. The important concepts are match. Identifies the file store documents or paths the rules apply to. Allow specific operations. Request auth contains Firebase authentication information. Get exists can expect Firestore documents when making authorization decisions. So it's sort of like a supercharged configuration using what is a JavaScript syntax. One especially important point, Firestore security rules protect client access, not trusted server code. Client access, sure. So one of the benefits of Firestore should be that sort of in the cloud, a lot of those authentication between the different services is something that Firestore just handles out of the box. So this is really about our client application and what it can do. Admin SDK server environments authenticate through IAM and can bypass Firestore security rules. That makes sense. Think of the architecture as, so we've got a web client, we do Firebase authentication. There's our rules with allow and deny. Cloud Firestore. Sure. Just going to have a look at my Firestore file as it appears at the moment and see if it makes sense, I guess. Be nice if this showed up in JavaScript syntax. How do I do that in a Z? I'll worry about that later. Unknown, select language. There's command KM. All right, here we go. JavaScript, there you go. All right, so I guess it's going to be, I guess these helper functions are going to be peculiar to our project, and there'll be a bunch of functions which are generic, and you'd see it in a lot of projects. So is authenticated is if the request has an auth property and it's not null, sure. So there's going to be a lot of crap like that. Is admin, reversing logic on is authenticated, Okay, cool. I guess this might have something to do with the way the claims works on against the user object. Is there's like an admin claim and a manager claim. Yeah, so this admin and this manager, if I go into the emulator and I go into authentication and I click on one of these guys as a manager. Which one's a manager? Not that one. Okay, so this one says manager is true. So if that said foobar, for example, then there would be a auth token foobar, something like that, right? I guess. Can use administration. Now, like, so the beauty of systems like this is I could say, you know, is the user's email simon@hobbs.ad.au, you know, and do a check to check that and determine that is if I'm going to like allow someone to access the admin. So, you know, the beauty of a system like this is that you just write JavaScript to do it, and that's fine. User profile field. So I guess this is going to be kept up to date against the data that we store in Firestore. Like, I don't think if I did this, it's not going to magically create that property in Firestore. So you just got to you got to keep that in mind. You know, by getting the AI to do this and just to examine the other application, I've created a massive number of fields, you know, that all have to be tracked and kept up to date. And if I decided that I want to remove, you know, this whole field section, I've got to do work in multiple places to achieve that. Other than that, there's not a huge much amount in here. Is valid user profile. I guess this is going to expand. Now, matching the user profile. So if I'm on user profiles, user ID, I don't want to say on because that's misleading. I don't actually know what this is matching, whether that's a route or whether that's like just a reference to the data. But yeah, so can create if the user ID can manage the profile and if it's a valid profile. Okay, I got a general idea. I'm not going to be writing this stuff in here manually for a while, but I've got a general idea of what this is doing. So I guess that's fine. Only goes to show how much complexity these systems have in them, I guess. All right, where are we? I don't know. I feel like this pin thing is going to require me to work out what's going on. So I'll probably take that off screen and work that out before the next session. What's going on with this pin? In the meantime, let's commit everything. And so we've added a lot of data to the user profile and started a kiosk situation. Just wondering if what headspace I'm in, or whether I'll wrap up the video for now. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for now, and I have to have a little think about some of the stuff I've seen here today. I'm mindful of the fact that I have a lot of misgivings about the Kiosk system, about the pin system. I introduced some code that doesn't quite work, so I've created some tech debts for myself there. But it's just created a lot more things for me that I want to go off and kind of ruminate on. So I'm going to do that. My name's Simon, or Cy, or Simesy, and yeah, if you got anything out of this session, which was very shambolic, good on you. That's really cool. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.